let's open the dialogue, see what we can do together, or what we can do. But I do see some holes in the community's medical services. Myself specifically have seen them. So I'm open and willing to talk. So let's hear your.
Great. Well, I appreciate the opportunity to speak to the council. And Mr. Mayor, one of the things, having arrived here about 6 months ago in Mesquite, it became very clear and evident that we have a significant provider shortage in town. So aside from the doctor to patient ratios that we follow from a national standpoint, it's just very clear and evident when you call to make an appointment in one of our clinics, we are booked out 2 to 3 months. So, one of the things that first started doing when I arrived is heavy physician recruitment, nurse practitioners, physician assistants to meet that need. Mayor Pro Tem with Heller came to meet with myself and Mr. Sweeten about what the city could do, and one of the suggestions was some potential rural development grant monies that may be able to be used to help offset some of the cost of housing for providers coming to town. If they come from the West Coast, it's not a big issue because the cost of housing is similar, St. George up the Wasatch Front, California, etc. When we recruit candidates from the Midwest or the South, the cost of housing is significantly different. We just had a provider that we had signed, a contract signed about 3 months ago that was supposed to start September 1st, and her home deal in West Virginia fell through and cannot afford a house payment here in Mesquite and there in West Virginia, so she will not be coming. So one of the challenges we have in bringing people from especially the central part of the country and the eastern part of the country outside of the big cities is that you're buying and selling homes there in the $80 to $100 a square foot, and you're buying and selling homes here in the $175 to $230 a square foot. So compensation ranges from large cities to small cities do fluctuate some, but from, we're working with the candidate right now from Ohio to Mesquite, the compensation range doesn't fluctuate a lot, but the cost of living fluctuates drastically, and specifically as it relates to homes. So gas, groceries, things like that are not significant. When we bring candidates out for an on-site visit and they take a real estate tour with the local realtors, and they get the sticker shock of the cost per square foot here, it's sometimes a deterrent. Not that that will keep us from being successful. We just have to work extra hard at finding candidates that may be in a different time in their career or their life that the cost of a home is not as big of an issue. Also, the size of homes. We have a lot of homes that can handle, a couple or 1 or 2 children. But we had a candidate come the other day that has 10 children, and it was quite a challenge to find a house in this area that was under $1 million that could fit, a 5-bedroom home. So it was a discussion we had. As I mentioned, we certainly can make things happen and will make things happen with any assistance or without any assistance, because that's our role and our responsibility. But if there is grant funding that can be shifted or moved towards helping the candidates come and purchase a house, we're definitely follow the same suit that has been mentioned and discussed here, that we're really focusing on providers that want to come and establish their lives and their careers and their family and purchase a home, and we're not terribly interested in people that want to commute from St. George or Las Vegas. So we're focused on that, which does narrow the pool down a little bit, but any assistance that anyone can provide us is greatly appreciated and certainly welcomed for discussion.
Okay, Councilman Rapson.
I sell brand new homes for $138 a foot. Nice ones, 2,200 feet, 4 bedrooms. Send them my way.
Great. We certainly will.
Okay. Comments, Councilman Wilson, please.
Yeah, do you feel like that's the biggest issue you've got, is just the housing problem? Or do you feel like there's other things like the hospital, how they're running their contracts, things of that nature? You'd mentioned something about maybe helping them with some of the student loans or some of those things if they'd stay a certain amount of time. Those are some of the issues. Also, I know that I believe you're pretty keen on nurse practitioners and PAs, as maybe opposed to doctors even. Is there a chance that, and also there's a thought process of bringing in doctors that may want to work part-time. Is that something that you're open to? Is that something that you're willing to look at?
Absolutely, great question. part of the success, or the majority of the success in physician recruiting, is just working very hard at it. So there's nothing in Mesquite that will keep us from bringing the providers here. We've got one sign that will start in January 1st. We've got a contract out that was sent out yesterday to a second one. We've got two others that are interested. One's from Cedar City, one's from Ohio. We've got 4 other on-site visits this month alone, one with a part-time family practice physician, one with a pediatrician this Friday, one on the 23rd with a family practice physician, one on the 24th with a family practice physician that will graduate next year. So the challenge with physician recruiting is you sign them today, they have to obtain a Nevada state license, which takes 3 months if you're a nurse practitioner or PA, and 4 to 6 months if you're a physician. And then once they get the license, we have to get them credentialed with all the insurance companies. So we call Medicare, Medicaid, Blue Cross, Aetna, Cigna, and say, here's a new provider we have, and we need to get them signed up so that we can get paid for the work that we're paying them to do. That process takes 3 months. So we've had providers we've signed now that will be starting December, January, February. But part of the challenge we have with community perception is you haven't done any physician recruiting, where in actuality we're doing a lot of physician recruiting. Just in the 6 months, we're probably interviewing 10 to 15 candidates every week. But we don't take warm bodies. We don't take people that don't want to invest and be part of the community. And we take top quality applicants. So we've had several positions that we've turned down, physicians and nurse practitioners and PAs, because if we can't look ourselves in the face and say we'd be comfortable going to see them, we're not going to bring them here just to add another provider. So we want the right person, not a warm body. So it is happening. It's not something we publicize until the provider is actually here, because just as I mentioned, we had one we signed 3 months ago, excuse me, and she had a house deal done, a down payment on her offer, and then the buyer backed out at the last minute, and she can't afford 2 houses here. So she backed out of her contract, and that was 3 months after she signed it. So she was supposed to start in 2 weeks and will no longer be starting, but we pick back up and keep working on it. So housing is an issue because it's a sticker shock for a lot of people, but it's nothing that we can't overcome.
Councilman Withelder.
Thank you, Your Honor. Mr. Sweeten, you and I had this discussion some time back. I believe that we could use some redevelopment agency money if we would apply that to new hires for an advanced down payment or something on real estate on a home, with the stipulation that, of course, that the applicant would live here and at some point would pay us back after a certain period of time or upon the sale of the real estate.
Right, and that was an idea that was discussed. We haven't done in-depth research on that. We certainly would be able to look at the way RDA funds and the requirements of how RDA funds are used.
Right.
And then depending on where that housing is developed or the type of housing that it is within town, try to work something out. We similarly could look at the way certain funds go into the RDA right now and see whether it would be more prudent to divert some of those funds into a sort of grant program is another option we talked about.
Mr. Hill, does that sound like something that might work with your recruitment process?
Sure. As you know, with the provider shortage, there are not only physicians, but nurse practitioners and PAs. They'll come out with lots of different offers all over the country. And the more lucrative and the more beneficial we could make ours, the better chance we have of landing the top talent. So anything that's out there is certainly welcomed and appreciated, but I think it would definitely...
Well, I don't think there's any question that we are in dire need of some additional medical help in all areas of mental or physical and mental health as well. So whatever we can do, I think we've got to pursue to the best of our ability. Thank you.
Okay, Councilman Bollard.
Thank you, Your Honor. Yeah, did I understand you saying it takes 4 to 6 months for a licensed physician from another state to get a license in Nevada? Is that
Correct.
what you said? Bob, do you think there's any way we possibly could do a BDR or some go that way to possibly, I mean, would it be helpful if they could come in under a recognition under the state of Nevada pending, give them a year, they could start working and give them a year under state law to get their license in Nevada? I mean, would that be helpful? Because we have the ability to introduce bills into the legislative session to get that recognition. And I would imagine that if that's a problem for us, it's got to be a problem for recruiting all over the state. So wouldn't just be specifically for us.
Yeah, and that's certainly something staff can look at and get strategy back. And
I want Mr. Hill to say that. Would that be helpful to you in the recruiting?
Absolutely.
Because you could get somebody on staff much smaller window.
Yeah, from the time we make a decision and the candidate makes a decision, we could have a contract to them in a matter of a couple of weeks.
Right.
And then they have to submit their application. The challenge is with giving a physician a state license, the Board of Medicine in Las Vegas goes through all their prior employment. So if they're new right out of school, it may be on the 4-month side.
Right.
If they're a tenured physician who's been at 5 or 6 different locations, they have to go back and verify every location, dates, credentials, those kind of things.
But if they can provide a valid a license to practice in another state, maybe there'd be something that we could do it as some time frame to give them, so they could be working while that process is going on.
That would be great.
So maybe we could potentially investigate that, Bob, on some bill draft request or somebody to sponsor that, because that has to be this got to be a statewide issue.
Yeah, we ran into this exact same problem some years ago when I sat on the Southern Nevada Health District and I was an interview committee. Numerous doctors from out of 2013, that it was close to a year before they could receive a license in the state of Nevada. And these were doctors with 20 years experience and more. It became quite frustrating. Councilman Rapson.
Yeah, I kind of like Mr. Ballwig's solution better. I had a bit of a similar personal experience. I was a CPA in California. I moved to Nevada. I had to go through the entire process again according to Nevada law. And that's taking the exam again, which is not fun. It's doing the audit work, which is not fun. It's starting over again after you've been a CPA for 6 or 7, 8 years. We actually got legislation passed, the company I work for, to, I guess you'd call it a mutually, whatever you call it, an agreement that if you substantially meet the requirements from another state that substantially meets the requirements of Nevada, you would be licensed without the rigmarole. So there is precedence for something like this. That seems to be a better solution. I caution about using RDA funds to buy somebody a house. That becomes very subjective at some point when the pot shop comes and say, hey, the guy that does all my weed growing, he's the genius behind the plants. I need another one, but he won't move here unless you guys buy him a house. That's a Pandora's box I'm not sure I want to get involved in. But if there's some way we can get some legislative help that would say you have a 1-year period of free practice, if you will, while we get you credentialed, and then now you'd have your insurance issues too. I don't know how they'd view that too, but I guess if it was legislative, it wouldn't be a big deal. But I kind of like that idea. Loans would be one thing if it was secured by something, but, banks went out of business during the recession when they had everything secured too. So I use caution on that one.
Councilman Green.
Yes, Mr. Hall, are you having any trouble convincing them of the economic opportunities there for them as for the long term?
We're not. One of the misperceptions I heard when I arrived here several months ago was that other places pay more than we do at the hospital, so there's a price disparity, say Intermountain Healthcare. That's generally not accurate. Our wages are typically higher than, say, those in Intermountain Healthcare for physicians and many other staff positions. So it's not a matter that the hospital can't afford to pay them. It's, as I mentioned, we have several candidates. If we go through 20 or 30 candidates, there might be 1 or 2 that we're interested in, and then they have to be interested in us, and then the numbers have to match, the timing has to match, and then once things work out, you send a contract and make a deal. So we're working feverishly on it, but there's nothing about Mesquite that gives me any pause that we can't bring good providers here, and we will.
That's good to hear.
Thank you. Councilman Ballard?
Yeah, real quick, man, do you know if there's any reciprocity type agreements out of St. George or out of Utah that they recognize on licensing?
I don't even think there's reciprocity for a nursing license, let alone physician or nurse practitioner, so.
Okay, so it's kind of, it's just a process time, it's a process time.
To make matters even worse, we've got some candidates we're working with that have Nevada nursing licenses, and they still have to go back and renew their Nevada nursing license and then apply for their Nevada nurse practitioner license after that. So it's a very tedious, cumbersome process that in this state is more lengthy than others I've been to. Councilmember Rapson's comment, Wyoming did have an interim license they would give, which was kind of a temporary until the board met and could get things fully vetted. So if that could pass in the state of Nevada, I'm sure us and the other hospitals and states would really appreciate it because it takes a long time.
Thank you.